All right, Blacktastic people. Hope everybody is ready for a Blacknificent, Blacktastic, and Blackerific session with the Deputy Chair of the AU. I can see several other folks have already come on. We got Blacksa in the building. We got Brother Shakara in the building. Donna Stamir in the building. Baba Elliott Booker streaming live through Time for an Awakening Radio and Black Talk Radio Network. So we are prepared to go. The presentation by the Deputy Chair of the AU, initially what he wanted to do is he wanted to make that available to everyone ahead of time. So then during the actual session, it would just be entirely something where, you know, we're having interactions, we're having Q&A, we're discussing things, we're bringing forth what it is that the AU Commission can do in order to assist the Black people who are continually subjected to anti-Black genocide. So this is definitely something that we wanted people to get a chance to see ahead of time. But within the last hour, we were setting the video. We got the video up and live because we are on point. And available to everyone. The Deputy Chair to the AU is also going to be coming on. And we're going to have the video. The plan is to stream that video live. So everyone who is seeing us live and in real time, we have Ajakwa Joe, who is going to make that video available so that everybody can see it together. It's not a long video. It's very well done, edited, and put together. AU quality video. So that link is there for everyone to be able to access. And then from there, and it's also going to be streamed to everybody live. So from there, we're going to just go straight into, after seeing the video, go into the Q&A. And I hope everyone has some very pointed, of course, very respectful, but also very pointed questions about what the AU Commission, especially the Deputy Chair to the AU, can do to assist African people who are subjected to anti-Black genocide. So, Ajakwa Joe, if you can start the stream.
Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Our topic for today: do Black Lives Matter? This has been a most unusual couple of weeks. Let us imagine what we have: an anxious and an uncertain international situation faced with the coronavirus, the uncertainties provided by President Donald Trump, with all of us facing an invisible enemy, which is wreaking havoc on the high, the mighty, as well as the lowly. The world order, as we have come to know it, is no longer recognizable. Things have been upended. We have total or near total lockdown. Air flights suspended. We have casualties in Italy. We have casualties in New York, London, and Paris. All of us confronted by this invisible enemy, against whom up to now we do not have any effective weapons to handle. The only thing we have to do is to exercise social distancing, wearing of masks, regular hand washing, and keeping safe. Amidst all this, what do we find? A black man callously murdered by a white policeman, his life slowly squeezed out of him by a knee on his neck. His plea that he cannot breathe, I cannot breathe, calling on his dead mama, went unheeded. But however, under normal circumstances, this must have gone unnoticed. But thanks to technology, a mobile phone captures the scene. The moment it's captured, the amateur video goes viral to prove that a picture is worth 1,000 words. What began as a routine all-American affair involving an apparent racist policeman in Minneapolis suddenly goes global. All hell seems to have broken loose. We have demonstrations in Paris, in London, in Sydney, and Brussels. In Antwerp, the statue of good old King Leopold has been pulled down. In Bristol, a known slave trader, Sir Edward Colston, who managed also to be a philanthropist, has his statue pulled down by an angry crowd. Now, this crowd comprised all ethnic groups, people of all colors. The statue was pulled down, trundled along the streets, into the harbor, and driven over the wall into the ocean, literally to swim or sink with the fishes. The statue of Sir Cecil Rhodes is not spared. At Oriel College, a debate ensued and a vote to pull the statue down as unacceptable in a period like this. Even the statue of good old venerable Sir Winston Spencer Churchill, known hero of World War II, has not escaped further scrutiny. He has had a dab of paint administered by an angry mob. The government had to board it to save it from further disgrace. You'll be right to ask, what the hell is going on? A tiny spark, has been said, can start a prairie fire. So stated Mao Zedong, the Chinese politician revolutionary, known for his penchant for the pithy axiomatic phrase, such as a revolution is not a tea party. All this appear to have caused some discomfort to the Home Secretary of the British government, Priti Patel, quintessential British Home Secretary, who claimed she was seeking to the core of her being, seeking to echo the sentiments of her Prime Minister Boris Johnson, a known young Turk, if ever there was one. She only ended up sounding more Catholic than the Pope. Vandalism would not be tolerated, she said. That sounds fair enough. That sounds a little more like the law and order president we have come to know as Donald J. Trump. Perhaps in periods such as this, we need to go back and listen to the brave and wise statesman, Sir Winston Spencer Churchill. He it was who advised students of politics to study history. The further back you look, he admonished, the further forward you are likely to see. So today, we shall endeavor to interrogate this matter a little further by looking back into the history of Africa in a bid to make sense of all this. And perhaps we might be able to glimpse a bit of the future. Now, let us recall the classic work of economic history, Capitalism and Slavery, by the former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Eric Williams, who observed in the opening chapter, quote, when in 1492, Christopher Columbus, representing the Spanish monarchy, discovered a new world, he set in train the long and bitter international rivalry over colonial possessions, for which after 4.5 centuries, no solution has yet been found, unquote. To quote him again, quote, he says, Negroes were stolen from Africa to work the lands stolen from the Indians. Thus began what has become known now as the transatlantic slave trade. According to the British Calendar of State Papers for the year 1663, the Negro slaves were, quote, the strength and sinews of this Western world, unquote. Therefore, the preservation and improvement of the trade to Africa, that is the slave trade, was, quote, a matter of very high importance to the kingdom, the plantations thereunto belonging. And so this matter remained a cardinal objective of British foreign policy all the way up to 1873. Now, in accordance with the current policy of the Stuart monarchy, the slave trade was entrusted to the Company of Royal Adventurers trading to Africa. This company was incorporated in the year 1663. It was intended to last 1,000 years. However, on 20th September 1672, they had to incorporate a new company. This time they called it the Royal Africa Company, and it was created by Royal Charter. This charter was signed by King Charles II. Its stated objective was the further encouragement of the undertakers in discovering the golden mines and settling of the plantations, so laudable an enterprise and conducing to an end as the increase of traffic and merchandise wherein this nation, England, has been famous. And further, a special grace do hereby grant unto the Society of the Royal Africa Company of England and their successors and none others to be prepared and furnished with ordnance, with artillery, with ammunition, and shall hereafter have, use, and enjoy all mines and silver which are or shall be found in South Barbary, Guinea, or Angola, for the buying and the selling and exchanging of goods, wares, and merchandise, to wit, gold, silver, and negroes, and to import redwood, elephant's teeth, and negro slaves. The Royal Charter continues, quote, "We do hereby, for us, our heirs, and our successors, give full power and authority under the said Royal Africa Company of England and their successors to enter into any ship, vessel, and attack, arrest, and seize all manner of ships, vessels, negro slaves, etc., provided that we, our heirs and successors, shall have and may have, take and receive 2/3 of all gold mines which shall be found, seized, possessed in the parts and places aforesaid," unquote. The authority, therefore, was direct from the crown. Over the years, the British establishment has not been exactly upfront with this aspect of their history. They would rather nobody talked about it. They have gone to great lengths to obfuscate and to obscure this history. But facts are stubborn, and facts have this uncomfortable habit of not going away that easily. They have this habit of popping up like warts or gray hair where you least want them to appear. So the British establishment and their Oxford professors have rather sought to obscure this history of their involvement in the transatlantic slave trade. They have tended to emphasize the fact that Britain was the first country to abolish the slave trade, referred to euphemistically as this odious commerce, unquote. It cannot be denied, ladies and gentlemen, that credit is in order for having abolished an otherwise great source of wealth. Clearly, the British Parliament, then Prime Minister Charles James Fox, his colleagues Pitt and company deserve some credit. The truth, however, is that Britain was also at the time the greatest slaving nation on earth and had reaped enormous profit out of African flesh and blood for a period of over 400 or so years. It has been argued that Britain's rise to prominence, that is a point conceded by former Prime Minister Tony Blair, was somewhat related to their massive slave trading profits. That is to say, the primitive accumulation of capital. It was the super profits from the slave trade which fueled the Industrial Revolution in England and became the engine of the British Empire, now the Commonwealth of Nations. For our purposes today, it is enough for us to cast our minds on the celebration of the 200th anniversary of the abolition of the slave trade by the British Parliament and the statement made on this topic by then Prime Minister Tony Blair. The date was 27th November 2006. This statement is entitled Britain's Role in the Slave Trade. I should limit myself to the first few paragraphs of the statement. Quote, "The transatlantic slave trade stands as one of the most inhuman enterprises in history. At a time when the capitals of Europe and America were championing the enlightenment of man, Their merchants were enslaving a continent. Racism, not the rights of man, drove the horrors of this triangular trade. Some 12 million were transported. Some 3 million died, all Africans. Slavery's impact on Africa, the Caribbean, the Americas, and Europe was profound. Thankfully, Britain was the first country to abolish the trade. Today, as we approach the commemoration of the 200th anniversary of that abolition, it is only right that we also recognize the active role Britain played until then in the slave trade. Quote, British industry and ports were intimately intertwined in it. Britain's rise to global prominence was partially dependent on a system of colonial slave labor. And as we recall its abolition, we should also recall our place in its practice. Quote, it is hard to believe that what would now be a crime against humanity was legal at the time, unquote. So we ask, legal? Come to think of it, what could have made this practice legal? And by what law? And by what legal system? And by what jurisprudence? Let us proceed by recalling simply the arising from the royal authority of His Royal Highness King Charles II of England, an Asiento contract was signed in the year of our Lord 1701 between the Queen of England and the King of Spain. The title of the agreement speaks to its intention. Quote, it says, contract for blacks or Negroes made by the King of Spain and agreed with Her Majesty of Great Britain for herself and her subjects as she shall appoint to be contractors, unquote. Now, part 1 of the contract reads, with license from Her Majesty, the contractor takes upon them the asiento or agreement to import Negro slaves into the Spanish West Indies and to establish this necessary trade for them and the reciprocal benefit of the majesties and subjects of both crowns, and the contractors oblige themselves to import in a space of 10 years 48,000 Negroes of both sexes, unquote. The agreement then goes on to describe in considerable detail the commercial duties we paid on each African bought and sold. They then set sail, supplied with ordnance, guns, handcuffs, etc., provided by the royal family of the United Kingdom. Now, how was Britain going to fulfill her part of this great legal undertaking? This contract to supply Negroes to the territories of the King of Spain. Let us remember the legal term, pacta sunt servanda. That is to say, agreements ought to be honored. Did Britain possess a farm in West Africa from where she had cultivated Negroes to reap, to harvest thereof, and to supply the King of Spain? Just picture, if you could, the violence that was about to be visited on our African ancestors, defenseless Africans who have nothing to do with agreements between European royalty. Fortunately, unlike the Africans who relied on oral traditions and their griots, Europeans kept meticulous records of their international trade in their statistics. In the abstract of evidence which was presented before the Select Committee of the House of Commons, it is stated clearly in Chapter 2 thereof, quote, that the trade in slaves in the basin of the river Senegal, the Negroes were procured chiefly by war and also by kidnapping, i.e., lying in wait near a village and where there was no war and seizing whom they could. Kidnapping was so generally prevalent that self-preservation became the first principle of the natives, and they go armed while a vessel was on the coast for fear of being taken. In seeking Your Excellencies to fully understand this rather complex history, many historians have sought to interrogate the issues. All the historians agree that the discovery of America was a game changer. According to Professor Albert Edu-Boahin, one-time professor of history at the University of Ghana and later politician in Ghana, the discovery of America was truly a game changer in the fortunes of Africa. He argued that when the Spaniards began to explore North and South America between 1492 and 1504, they started to establish plantations and to work the gold and silver mines. An acute problem they discovered was the shortage of labor. The Carib and the local Indians were simply not cut for the hard labor involved. Most simply died from the laborious exertions. A Spanish priest recommended the use of Africans, arguably a more hardy race. As more mines were opened and as more plantations were set up, the demand for slaves increased. Between 1530 and 1600, an average of 1,300 slaves a year were being exported to the Americas. According to Prof. Edubuahin, in his book, Topics for West African History, the number rose to about 27,500 a year in the 17th century and up to 70,000 in the 18th century. And by 1830s, it had soared to 135,000 per year. This phenomenal increase was due to the steady colonization of North and South America and the plantation system in the New World. Most of these slaves were exported from the region between modern Ghana and the Cameroons. So how were all these Africans enslaved and purchased? Again, according to Prophet Dubuahin, African scholars and politicians today must be honest enough to admit that the enslavement and sale of our African brothers and sisters from the 17th century onwards were done by the Africans themselves. This was largely accomplished by the coastal chiefs at the behest of the Europeans, who had gotten them indebted by providing them with European goods on credit. They introduced guns, alcohol, and worthless trinkets and got them addicted and indebted, and they were therefore obliged to hunt down their people and sell them. Quarrels were fomented among ethnic groups, and wars were fueled, all for slaves. It is quite possible that all these tribal wars that we've read about were instigated and fomented for this purpose. Very few Europeans marched inland to capture slaves. This was done by Africans themselves. Again, according to Prophet Dubuahin, Africans became enslaved in 4 main ways. 1, criminals sold by chiefs as punishment. 2, free Africans obtained through raids by Africans, European gangs, kidnapping and panyari. 3, domestic slaves resold. And 4, prisoners of war. Though punishment of malefactors by selling them as slaves was not new in Africa, with the beginning and progress of the slave trade, the practice became grossly abused. Many kings formed the habit of punishing each, any, and every offense by enslaving the accused. Subversive plots against local authorities became suddenly more common when on the coastal towns slave ships dropped anchor. Recently, there has been some debate on the effect of colonization on Africa. We are aware that colonization arose from the partition of the continent, which itself arose from the slave trade. Some historians, some European historians, and even some politicians have argued that the slave trade and empire were indeed good for Africa. For example, in the year 2002, Boris Johnson, then a journalist for The Spectator, but now Prime Minister, wrote, and I quote, "Africa may be a blot, but it is not a blot on our conscience. The problem is not that we were once in charge. The problem is that we are not in charge anymore." It was this same Boris Johnson, Your Excellencies, writing a telegraph, who stated with respect to Her Majesty, the Queen, quote, that the Queen has come to love the Commonwealth partly because it supplies her with regular cheering crowds of flag-waving pickaninnies. Maybe I should repeat this. The Queen has come to love the Commonwealth partly because it supplies her with regular cheering crowds of flag-waving pickaninnies. This is the kind of casual racism that has come to characterize some British and American leaders. But it is not new. African slaves were considered less than human. For example, in the debates which took place in the United States Congress on the question of abolition of slavery, one senator, Senator James Henry Hammond, expressed himself in this manner, quote, "Although I am perfectly satisfied that no human process can elevate the black man to an equality with the whites, admitting that it can be done, are we prepared for the consequences which must follow? Are we, the people of the North, prepared to place our political power on an equality with their own? Are we prepared to see them mingling in our legislatures? Is any portion of this country prepared to see them enter these halls and take their seats by our sides in perfect equality with white representatives of an Anglo-Saxon race? To see them fill that chair? To see them placed at the heads of your departments? Or to see some Othello or Toussaint or Boyer, gifted with genius and inspired by ambition, grasp the presidential wreath and wield the destinies of this great republic? From such a picture, I turn with irrepressible disgust, unquote. Let us remember that Barack Obama, a true African American, became president. It is this deep-seated racism that resulted in the murder of George Floyd and many more African Americans. It is this same deep-seated racism that the youth of America and now the youth of the world all together is rallying and protesting against under the banner of Black Lives Matter. What can we in the African Union, indeed the African Union Commission, or perhaps all of Africa, do to help our brothers and sisters? When Africa is integrating, it has been said, and developing, the whole world comes together. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is our task. It is cut out for us, and we dare not fail our people. I'd like to thank you for your kind and polite attention. Thank you very much.
We're going to take it from the top. What the deputy chair of the AU is saying is so important that we don't want to miss even a second of it. So we're going to, if you have 2 minutes, to restart the stream, and we're going to stream the audio directly, so it doesn't come through the speakers first, but just goes straight to you. So I think that this is definitely a good time to just pause and definitely thank all of our folks who have been promoting the event and letting people know about the event. We have various other people. We got Black Sit out of the Gambia. Big ups to her. We got Brother Dinas Tamir. A lot of these folks have interviewed me in the past, so these are people who I actually know and I have some relationship with. So definitely appreciate you all coming on board. Brother Elliot Booker, a big heavy hitter out of Time for an Awakening and Black Talk Radio. So we have them on. We got all these people, subscribers online. I know we also have Africa Diaspora News Channel representing. We have Nii Night, the Blackest Truth, also on the line. So all of you who are streaming, you can check the stream at Brother Shakaraj's channel. We also have the link there to Bibi Tumi, Do Black Lives Matter. For those who are also wanting to listen to Time for an Awakening Radio live, you can check it there. So as we just coordinate some things, one thing that we want to keep thinking about, at least 2 questions, chairperson to the AU, because in his talk, he asked the question directly, where he said, what is it that we can do? What is it that the AU and the AU Commission can do for Black people who are being continually subjected to ongoing genocide, anti-Black genocide? What can the AU Commission do? And this is definitely one thing that I think it is clear that we can say, all right, if we are looking at even citizenship, if we're looking at something like refugee status, it's not like anything that we say is automatically going to be granted, but definitely we want to have our voices heard in terms of what it is that we would like to do. So, again, this is the event. We're going to have the deputy chairperson. He's already on the line. And we want, again, for everyone to hear very clearly what it is that he's saying, because it's on that basis that we're going to formulate our questions, and we're going to have an interaction, a very historic interaction. Over the years, people have said, oh, well, government about when we had coming from the AU, but this is now finally that strong voice that we've been waiting for from the AU. And we're getting that question of what, and I got citizenship in Ghana, but what citizenship didn't have to go through all that. And then they want to see, okay, well, are you starting a business? Do you have capital? Have any place that we can go where we're not going to get shot, our children are not going to get shot, or having the right for Breonna Taylor, right, who's sleeping in a house and then unidentified as people of that nature. So again, this is why we wanted to convene all of these different people and people from various platforms, is because this official of the AU has reached out to us and said, what is it that we can do? And on the basis of what he's saying about the George Floyd situation, about the entire world on fire, about people who look like they're our allies who are marching, but may not necessarily be our allies. What is it that can be said? What is it that can actually be done? Because I think maybe even the time for saying has passed and it's really time for doing, right? Recently, we've seen Ghana has done the year of return, and they got citizenship restored for over 100 African people, right? And the initial thing was in 2016, and that was the work of the deputy chairperson of the AU. And that's when he was the executive secretary to the president of Ghana. Measured. This is somebody who isn't just talking. This isn't somebody who just wants to, go on. But, I think maybe if we can even have a few words, I know that he's on the line. So as we transition and we pull the video up, maybe he can even share a few words just to give a little back. So if Deputy Chairperson to the AU will be so kind, we will humbly just suggest that maybe I go to the back and he steps to the front, because he is the man of the hour. He's the man you want to hear from.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Brother Kambon, for all the work you're doing. I believe after the year of return organized in Ghana, the question arose beyond the year of return. After the year of return, what do we do next? Now, the murder of George Floyd has brought home to all of us the urgency and the need for all of Africa to stand behind our brothers in the diaspora, especially since they did not go there on their own accord, but there's a history of exploitation behind that. So I think it is time now for member states of the African Union to look at this whole Black Lives Matter from a continental point of view. The African Union Commission, of course, is member state driven. So one is hoping that 1, 2, or 3 member states can come together and mobilize opinion. And if they're able to do that, they can instruct the African Union, both the Commission and the Assembly of Heads of States, to start looking at this issue more critically. So it is a two-way street. both sides of the diaspora, both on the continent and in the diaspora, have to begin to work together. In the AU now, we are planning to have a summit with CARICOM. And I believe this matter will come up for more closer discussion. We have a draft MOU with the CARICOM. And out of this, so much can develop. So there's still a lot of work to be done. The problem now is, or the task now, is to intensify awareness, increase organization, because as Kwame Nkrumah said, organization decides everything. So we have to be a little more deliberate and work concretely together. The African family in the diaspora, the African family in the continent, because from little things, big things evolve. So I'll stop here and I'll continue to listen to you and also to urge you and to thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we definitely thank the Deputy Chair to the AU, Honorable Nii Kwesi Quartey, and it looks like we have the video queued up. So, Brother Shakara, I think we're ready when you are, and we're definitely going to improve that audio. So, let's go ahead and get with it.
Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Our topic for today, do Black Lives Matter? This has been a most unusual couple of weeks. Let us imagine what we have, an anxious and an uncertain international situation faced with the coronavirus, the uncertainties provided by President Donald Trump, with all of us facing an invisible enemy, which is wreaking havoc on the high, the mighty, as well as the lowly. The world order, as we have come to know it, is no longer recognizable. Things have been upended. We have total or near total lockdown. Air flights suspended. We have casualties in Italy. We have casualties in New York, London, and Paris. All of us confronted by this invisible enemy, against whom up to now we do not have any effective weapons to handle. The only thing we have to do is to exercise social distancing, wearing of masks, regular hand washing, and keeping safe. Amidst all this, what do we find? A black man callously murdered by a white policeman. His life slowly squeezed out of him by a knee on his neck. His plea that he cannot breathe, I cannot breathe, calling on his dead mama, went unheeded. But however, under normal circumstances, this must have gone unnoticed. But thanks to technology, a mobile phone captures the scene. The moment it's captured, the amateur video goes viral to prove that a picture is worth 1,000 words. What began as a routine all-American affair involving an apparent racist policeman in Minneapolis suddenly goes global. All hell seems to have broken loose. There were demonstrations in Paris, in London, in Sydney, and Brussels. In Antwerp, the statue of good old King Leopold has been pulled down. In Bristol, a known slave trader, Sir Edward Colston, who managed also to be a philanthropist, has his statue pulled down by an angry crowd. Now, this crowd comprised all ethnic groups, people of all colors. The statue was pulled down, trundled along the streets, into the harbor, and driven over the wall into the ocean, literally to swim or sink with the fishes. The statue of Sir Cecil Rhodes is not spared. At Oriel College, a debate ensued and a vote to pull the statue down as unacceptable in a period like this. Even the statue of good old venerable Sir Winston Spencer Churchill, known hero of World War II, has not escaped further scrutiny. He has had a dab of paint administered by an angry mob. The government had to board it to save it from further disgrace. You'll be right to ask, what the hell is going on? A tiny spark, has been said, can start a prairie fire. So stated Mao Zedong, the Chinese politician revolutionary, known for his penchant for the pithy axiomatic phrase, such as a revolution is not a tea party. All this appear to have caused some discomfort to the Home Secretary of the British government, Priti Patel, quintessential British Home Secretary, who claimed she was seeking to the core of her being, seeking to echo the sentiments of her Prime Minister Boris Johnson, a known young Turk, if ever there was one. She only ended up sounding more Catholic than the Pope. Vandalism would not be tolerated, she said. That sounds fair enough. That sounds a little more like the law and order president we have come to know as Donald J. Trump. Perhaps in periods such as this, we need to go back and listen to the brave and wise statesman, Sir Winston Spencer Churchill. He it was who advised students of politics to study history. The further back you look, he admonished, the further forward you are likely to see. So today, we shall endeavor to interrogate this matter a little further by looking back into the history of Africa in a bid to make sense of all this. And perhaps we might be able to glimpse a bit of the future. Now, let us recall the classic work of economic history, Capitalism and Slavery, by the former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Eric Williams, who observed in the opening chapter, quote, when in 1492, Christopher Columbus, representing the Spanish monarchy, discovered a new world, he set in train the long and bitter international rivalry over colonial possessions, for which after 4.5 centuries, no solution has yet been found, unquote. To quote him again, quote, he says, Negroes were stolen from Africa to work the lands stolen from the Indians. Thus began what has become known now as the transatlantic slave trade. According to the British calendar of state papers for the year 1663, the Negro slaves were, quote, the strength and sinews of this Western world, unquote. Therefore, the preservation and improvement of the trade to Africa, that is the slave trade, was, quote, a matter of very high importance to the kingdom, the plantations thereunto belonging. And so this matter remained a cardinal objective of British foreign policy all the way up to 1873. Now, in accordance with the economic policy of the Stuart monarchy, the slave trade was entrusted to the Company of Royal Adventurers trading to Africa. This company was incorporated in the year 1663. It was intended to last 1,000 years. However, On 20th September 1672, they had to incorporate a new company. This time they called it the Royal Africa Company, and it was created by Royal Charter. This charter was signed by King Charles II. Its stated objective was the further encouragement of the undertakers in discovering the golden mines and settling of the plantations, so laudable an enterprise and conducing to an end as the increase of traffic and merchandise, wherein this nation, England, has been famous. And further, a special grace do hereby grant unto the society of the Royal Africa Company of England and their successors and none others to be prepared and furnished with ordnance, with artillery, with ammunition, and shall hereafter have, use, and enjoy all mines and silver which are or shall be found in South Barbary, Guinea, or Angola, for the buying and the selling and exchanging of goods, wares, and merchandise, to wit, gold, silver, and negroes, and to import redwood, elephant's teeth, and negro slaves. The Royal Charter continues, quote, "We do hereby, for us, our heirs, and our successors, give full power and authority under the said Royal Africa Company of England and their successors to enter into any ship, vessel, and attack, arrest, and seize all manner of ships, vessels, negro slaves, etc., provided that we, our heirs and successors, shall have and may have, take and receive 2/3 of all gold mines which shall be found, seized, processed in the parts and places aforesaid," unquote. The authority, therefore, was direct from the crown. Over the years, the British establishment has not been exactly upfront with this aspect of their history. They would rather nobody talked about it. They have gone to great lengths to obfuscate and to obscure this history. But facts are stubborn, and facts have this uncomfortable habit of not going away that easily. They have this habit of popping up like warts or gray hair where you least want them to appear. So the British establishment and their Oxford professors have rather sought to obscure this history of their involvement in the transatlantic slave trade. They have tended to emphasize the fact that Britain was the first country to abolish the slave trade, referred to euphemistically as this odious commerce, unquote. It cannot be denied, ladies and gentlemen, that credit is in order for having abolished an otherwise great source of wealth. Clearly, the British Parliament, then Prime Minister Charles James Fox, his colleagues Pitt and company deserve some credit. The truth, however, is that Britain was also at the time the greatest slaving nation on earth and had reaped enormous profit out of African flesh and blood for a period of over 400 or so years. It has been argued that Britain's rise to prominence, that is a point conceded by former Prime Minister Tony Blair, was somewhat related to their massive slave trading profits. That is to say, the primitive accumulation of capital. It was the super profits from the slave trade which fueled the Industrial Revolution in England and became the engine of the British Empire, now the Commonwealth of Nations. For our purposes today, it is enough for us to cast our minds on the celebration of the 200th anniversary of the abolition of the slave trade by the British Parliament and the statement made on this topic by then Prime Minister Tony Blair. The date was 27th November 2006. This statement is entitled Britain's Role in the Slave Trade. I should limit myself to the first few paragraphs of the statement. Quote, "The transatlantic slave trade stands as one of the most inhuman enterprises in history. At a time when the capitals of Europe and America were championing the enlightenment of man, their merchants were enslaving a continent. Racism, not the rights of man, drove the horrors of this triangular trade. Some 12 million were transported. Some 3 million died, all Africans. Slavery's impact on Africa, the Caribbean, the Americas, and Europe was profound. Thankfully, Britain was the first country to abolish the trade. Today, as we approach the commemoration of the 200th anniversary of that abolition, it is only right that we also recognize the active role Britain played until then in the slave trade. Quote, British industry and ports were intimately intertwined in it. Britain's rise to global prominence was partially dependent on the system of colonial slave labor. And as we recall its abolition, we should also recall our place in its practice. Quote, it is hard to believe that what would now be a crime against humanity was legal at the time, unquote. So we ask, legal? Come to think of it, what could have made this practice legal? And by what law? And by what legal system? And by what jurisprudence? Let us proceed by recalling simply that arising from the royal authority of His Royal Highness King Charles II of England, an Asiento contract was signed in the year of our Lord 1701 between the Queen of England and the King of Spain. The title of the agreement speaks to its intention. Quote, it says, contract for blacks or Negroes made by the King of Spain and agreed for Her Majesty of Great Britain for herself and her subjects as she shall appoint to be contractors, unquote. Now, part 1 of the contract reads, with license from Her Majesty, the contractor takes upon them the asiento or agreement to import Negro slaves into the Spanish West Indies and to establish this necessary trade for them and the reciprocal benefit of the majesties and subjects of both crowns, and the contractors oblige themselves to import in a space of 10 years, 48,000 Negroes of both sexes, unquote. The agreement then goes on to describe in considerable detail the commercial duties we paid on each African bought and sold. They then set sail, supplied with ordnance, guns, handcuffs, etc., provided by the royal family of the United Kingdom. Now, how was Britain going to fulfill her part of this great legal undertaking? This contract to supply Negroes to the territories of the King of Spain. Let us remember the legal term, pacta sunt servanda. That is to say, agreements ought to be honored. Did Britain possess a farm in West Africa from where she had cultivated Negroes to reap, to harvest thereof, and to supply the King of Spain? Just picture, if you could, the violence that was about to be visited on our African ancestors, defenseless Africans who have nothing to do with agreements between European royalty. Fortunately, unlike the Africans who relied on oral traditions and their griots, Europeans kept meticulous records of their international trade in their statistics. In the abstract of evidence which was presented before the Select Committee of the House of Commons, it is stated clearly in Chapter 2 thereof, quote, that the trade in slaves in the basin of the river Senegal, the Negroes were procured chiefly by war and also by kidnapping, i.e., lying in wait near a village where there was no war and seizing whom they could. Kidnapping was so generally prevalent that self-preservation became the first principle of the natives, and they go armed while a vessel was on the coast for fear of being taken. In seeking Your Excellencies to fully understand this rather complex history, many historians have sought to interrogate the issues. All the historians agree that the discovery of America was a game changer. According to Professor Albert Edubuahin, one-time professor of history at the University of Ghana and later politician in Ghana, the discovery of America was truly a game changer in the fortunes of Africa. He argued that when the Spaniards began to explore North and South America between 1492 and 1504, they started to establish plantations and to work the gold and silver mines. An acute problem they discovered was the shortage of labor. The Carib and the local Indians were simply not cut for the hard labor involved. Most simply died from the laborious exertions. A Spanish priest recommended the use of Africans, arguably a more hardy race. As more mines were opened and as more plantations were set up, the demand for slaves increased. Between 1530 and 1600, an average of 1,300 slaves a year were being exported to the Americas. According to Prof. Edubuahin, in his book, Topics for West African History, the number rose to about 27,500 a year in the 17th century and up to 70,000 in the 18th century. And by 1830s, it had soared to 135,000 per year. This phenomenal increase was due to the steady colonization of North and South America and the plantation system in the New World. Most of these slaves were exported from the region between modern Ghana and the Cameroons. So how were all these Africans enslaved and purchased? Again, according to Prof. Edubuahin, African scholars and politicians today must be honest enough to admit that the enslavement and sale of our African brothers and sisters from the 17th century onwards were done by the Africans themselves. This was largely accomplished by the coastal chiefs at the behest of the Europeans, who had gotten them indebted by providing them with European goods on credit. They introduced guns, alcohol, and worthless trinkets and got them addicted and indebted, and they were therefore obliged to hunt down their people and sell them. Quarrels were fomented among ethnic groups, and wars were fueled, all for slaves. It is quite possible that all these tribal wars that we've read about were instigated and fomented for this purpose. Very few Europeans marched inland to capture slaves. This was done by Africans themselves. Again, according to Prof. Edubuahin, Africans became enslaved in four main ways. One, criminals sold by chiefs as punishment. Two, free Africans obtained through raids by Africans, European gangs, kidnapping and panyari. Three, domestic slaves resold. And four, prisoners of war. Though punishment of malefactors by selling them as slaves was not new in Africa, with the beginning and progress of the slave trade, the practice became grossly abused. Many kings formed the habit of punishing each, any, and every offense by enslaving the accused. Subversive plots against local authorities became suddenly more common when on the coastal towns, slave ships dropped anchor. Recently, there has been some debate on the effect of colonization on Africa. We are aware that colonization arose from the partition of the continent, which itself arose from the slave trade. Some historians, some European historians, and even some politicians have argued that the slave trade and empire were indeed good for Africa. For example, in the year 2002, Boris Johnson, then a journalist for The Spectator, but now Prime Minister, wrote, and I quote, "Africa may be a blot, but it is not a blot on our conscience." The problem is not that we were once in charge. The problem is that we are not in charge anymore. It was this same Boris Johnson, Your Excellencies, writing a telegraph, who stated with respect to Her Majesty, the Queen, quote, that the Queen has come to love the Commonwealth partly because it supplies her with regular cheering crowds of flag-waving pickaninnies. Maybe I should repeat this. The Queen has come to love the Commonwealth partly because it supplies her with regular cheering crowds of flag-waving pickaninnies. This is the kind of casual racism that has come to characterize some British and American leaders. But it is not new. African slaves were considered less than human. For example, in the debates which took place in the United States Congress on the question of abolition of slavery, one senator, Senator James Henry Hammond, expressed himself in this manner, quote, "Although I am perfectly satisfied that no human process can elevate the black man to an equality with the whites, admitting that it can be done, are we prepared for the consequences which must follow? Are we, the people of the North, prepared to place our political power on an equality with their own? Are we prepared to see them mingling in our legislatures? Is any portion of this country prepared to see them enter these halls and take their seats by our sides in perfect equality with white representatives of an Anglo-Saxon race? To see them fill that chair? To see them placed at the heads of your departments? Or to see some Othello or Toussaint or Boyer, gifted with genius and inspired by ambition, grasped the presidential wreath and willed the destiny of this great republic? From such a picture, I turn with irrepressible disgust, unquote. Let us remember that Barack Obama, a true African American, became president. It is this deep-seated racism that resulted in the murder of George Floyd and many more African Americans. It is this same deep-seated racism that the youth of America and now the youth of the world all together is rallying and protesting against under the banner of Black Lives Matter. What can we in the African Union, indeed the African Union Commission, or perhaps all of Africa, do to help our brothers and sisters? When Africa is integrating, it has been said, and developing, the whole world comes together. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is our task. It is cut out for us, and we dare not fail our people. I'd like to thank you for your kind and polite attention. Thank you very much.
All right. So we definitely everyone's time. Shakara is on, and we actually had a request out of the Gambia, Sister Juliet Ryan out of Blacksmith, who said she's actually going to try to deal with citizenship in the Gambia. So she wanted to maybe put her questions up front. So I think we can definitely allow for that. But where we are now, it's time for interaction. We've heard what the deputy chair for the AU has had to say to us. Very powerful words. He's given us the historical context so we can understand that this isn't a new thing. This hasn't just started with George Floyd. You know, some people think that this maybe, oh, after smartphones came up, well, now this is where we're seeing stuff. But a lot of this was very well documented. So maybe Sister Julia Ryan, if you can either come on the video or also type your questions for the kicking off of the interaction with Deputy Chair to the AU. Yeah. All right, Sister Julia, I'm seeing you today.
Good things, brother. Thank you so much. It's good to see you again. I'd like to thank His Excellency. His Excellency, I hope you can hear me. This is Juliet, the founder of Blacksmith, and we are a family of over 31,000, diasporans. And we came together as a result of us Blaxiting the UK amid dire racism that was covered very extensively in the British media that both of our children experienced. Growing up in England, we faced horrific racism, violent racism, unbelievable psychological racism, subtle racism, indirect and direct racism. We faced institutional racism, systematic racism, and systemic racism. And as a result of that, we realized that we had to come home. And we are residents here in the Gambia, and we love the Gambia, and we love the Gambian people who have given us a fantastic welcome here. However, as many other diasporans, we have faced issues around the subject of citizenship. Here in the Gambia, where I live, where I invest, where I have built my home with my family and my son who goes to school, we are considered aliens. And it makes us feel like second-class citizens. And I myself have campaigned heavily here for automatic citizenship. I've called press conferences, put on the front page of the newspapers, been in the news campaigning ardently, especially in light of the new constitution, the draft constitution that has been drawn up. Unfortunately, it seems as though our appeals, and I represent 31,000 people, has fallen on deaf ears. We have to wait 15 years before we can become a citizen here in the Gambia, which is a travesty. We are returning home. We are Kunte Kintes. We are Africans, and we hate not to be received as Africans, as other than. And it upsets and hurts us that a European, the people that are responsible, majority responsible for our enslavement, are able to get citizenship before we do by merely marrying a Gambian. And they can obtain that within 7 to 5 years while we're waiting 15 years. And it also affects our ability to own property and be classed in a different category where we have to lease our property rather than own it in perpetuity. This is a travesty. We coming back need to work hand in hand with our African continental brothers and sisters. So I want to know, what can you do to clear some of these obstacles that we are facing, not just in Gambia, but across the continent? Because although we and our descendants were enslaved and were on plantations for many, many, many hundreds of years, some of them weren't there for hundreds of years and were enslaved in the 1800s, because it was my great-great-grandparents which were enslaved, which were working on the cane plantation in Jamaica. What can the AU do to help us? Because we would like to connect with the AU and find out what solutions there are. Our platform, we have over 2.3 million people who are listening to us, who are hearing our pleas. But why isn't it, out of those 2 million people that are listening to us, why is the African government not hearing us? What can the AU do to help make our voice heard? What can the AU do to help us to obtain citizenship of diasporans? What can the AU do to help us stop being called aliens in our homelands?
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Sister Julia, I can feel the emotions that are going through her as she's speaking, and I can feel that when where you're coming from, you're being shot down and kneed in the neck.
Thank you.
Is pain. So, yeah. Over to you, please. That's the question. Citizenship.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My sister, can you hear me?
Yes.
Let me thank you for your question. Let me thank you for your passion. And if I may say so without offense, I like your afro. It reminds me of Angela Davis. And let me thank you for coming home, back home. You know, this is very much work in progress. And it's about changing minds. It's about organizing to change policy. A lot of us in Africa have not been as acquainted with our history as we ought to. We are slowly now getting acquainted. We are slowly now beginning to understand the travesty that was inflicted on our continent, which divided and fractured the African family. And we are slowly doing it in Ghana. We are welcoming back our brothers and sisters from the diaspora who have a lot of skills, a lot of investment. They bring a lot of stuff because they really, really want to come back to Africa. So we're doing it at the national level, and we're hoping that this campaign will grow. And this process that we are going through now, you and I and Kambon, is part of the educational process. You know, ideas are known to become a material force when they have seized the masses. And it's about organization, it's about teaching, it's about changing minds and getting that into policy. So we have 1 or 2 countries beginning to see the value of receiving our brothers and sisters from the diaspora who have come with trained minds. You know, there was a very passionate letter written by W.E. Du Bois to Kwame Nkrumah when he was invited to come home to Ghana and settle and work on the Encyclopedia Africana. In this letter, he said, our forefathers were taken from the coast of West Africa in chains. I want to thank you for welcoming me here to come and work and see the evening of my life in Africa, so that when I die, my bones will mingle with the bones of my forefathers. This is the depth of the emotion shown by people like W.E. Du Bois, people like George Floyd who came to work, but that was only the beginning. And with people like Obadele Kambon who have come, and issues that we have seen with George Floyd, it is slowly becoming a flood. So I want to thank you for bringing your expertise. I can assure you that your value is very much appreciated in the Gambia as well as in Ghana, everywhere. And this can only increase with time, okay? So thank you, my sister, for coming. And I assure you, in spite of all the obstacles, you are very much loved and welcome back home in Africa. But we still got work to do. Thank you.
Very, very, very much. Thank you very much. The last thing I'd like to add is just that recently the Bank of England and also the Church of England have both, and many other organizations have made statements of apologizing for the so-called links in slavery. I think it's reparations time. I think it's time for the payback. I think it's time for them to cut the check. I think it's time for us to get compensation in order to help with the repatriation. I have hundreds of thousands of people who want to come home, and we need for the AU to pave the way. Is there a way that the AU can represent us? We are over 200 million people in the diaspora, and a huge percentage of us want to come home. We don't want to be there anymore in the West. The West is not best. So we want to come home. Is there a way that you can be a liaison?
The AU as an organization is member state driven. We take our instructions from our member states. So our campaign will have to be with our member states. And I can tell you, if you have a few more member states thinking in that direction and making policy in that direction, it's going to happen. We are also, we've had apologies from lawyers, we've had apologies from a few banks. We are waiting to hear an apology from Her Majesty the Queen herself. Okay, so we have to struggle and fight and push for that. And then this will become a flood. No force on earth can stop an idea whose time has come. And this time is now. Thank you.
Thank you. Show us the money. We want the money.
Yeah.
Okay, and for those who may not know, I know the deputy chair to the AU as a personal friend. And again, this is not somebody who is just a talker. We would not have citizenship. The 34 of us who got citizenship in 2016, it was directly because of him in his position as executive secretary to the president. So we say, with his position as deputy chair of the AU, we all have our eyes and our hopes on you, but we're hearing member state based. I think we got Brother Shakara about to come on next. If he has any questions, he's also based out of the UK, part of the Al-Qaeda revivalist movement. So if you have a question, Brother Shakara, please go ahead and give it to the Honorable Nii Kwesi Quartey, who is giving so much of his time for us. So please, Brother Shakara.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, man, I can hear you.
Greetings. First of all, Mechiawo, Nana Kwesi, thank you for joining us. Fantastic. Yeah, I'm learning to speak Metechi Krakra. So, you know what I'm saying, be patient with me. But when I come, we'll have a conversation exclusively in Tree, I'm sure.
No, your tree is better than mine, I can assure you.
Indeed.
So we I'm saying our students do.
Yes, I have a good teacher in Brother Obadele, so we give thanks. I as an African living in the UK, I did take a significant interest in much of what you had to say regarding the UK and its supposed abolition of slavery. And so my question is, I got two questions, Brother Obadele. I don't want to hog the mic, but my first question is about the extent to which we continue to teach colonial history in our home nations. And one of the biggest aspects of colonial history is the fallacy that Britain quote unquote led Europe in abolishing the so-called slave trade. And I want to just read you a tweet, from Her Majesty's Treasury that was posted in February of 2015, I believe. And it says, here's today's surprising Friday fact. Millions of you have helped end the slave trade through your taxes. Did you know in 1833 Britain used 20 million, which was 40% of its national budget, to buy freedom for all slaves in the empire? The amount of money borrowed for the Slavery Abolition Act was so large that it wasn't paid off until 2015, which means that living British citizens helped pay to end the slave trade, unquote. Now, just to explain, what happened was when in 1833 they passed this act. This act for the ending of slavery. The British government compensated, its enslavers in Britain to the tune of £20 million, which is the equivalent of like 300 and something billion in today's money. And as a result, what came out at that time, people didn't know for all this time that taxpayers in this country were paying off that debt, that loan. Was being paid by, and so to the extent that Africans exist in Britain, we have been through our tax money paying off Britain's
slave owners,
basically. We've been, right. So if you understand what I mean. So I'm pointing that out, to say that this idea, no credit whatsoever, needs to be given to the British government for so-called ending slavery. And so my first question to you is, what can we do? What is the AU? What can be done through the AU to tell the true history of Africans in the diaspora, so that our brothers and sisters on the continent know and have an intimate knowledge of the true history, nature, and condition facing African people in the diaspora, so that we can develop a more Pan-African understanding of our global African community?
Thank you. This is work for both of us, I think. And this particular intercourse that we're having is just one of the ways in which we can do this together. It's about education, it's about information, it's about organization. It's a duty for all of us, and the time is now. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay, Jah guide, my brother.
All right. Well, I want to suggest to you, Uncle, that there's a book here by the name of The Great Abolition Sham. It's by a guy called Michael Jordan, who's a European, but it's useful information. If you would like, it's a book suggestion for you. And finally, for now, if there's more time,
I love to read it, man. I love to read it.
Yes, sir. Well, please do so. And finally, for now, if there's more time, I will come back later. I'd like to know where there are many reparations campaigns around the world, and in fact, in 1993, one of the transformative conferences on the issue of reparations was held in Abuja, Nigeria. So there's a lot of history in terms of the connection between Africans in the diaspora and Africans on the continent with regards to the issue of reparatory justice. And I like the fact that you linked the enslavement process to the colonial process, understanding that when we use terms like Maafa in Swahili or Maangamizi, those terminologies link enslavement and invasion to colonization. So where does the AU stand on the issue of reparations and preparatory justice?
Actually, the AU has a resolution supporting reparations. It was passed in, I think, 2012 by the Council of Ministers. What is left is to give effect to it. Okay? And to do that, we need to work together, both Caribbean, diaspora Africans, Africans on the continent, and the governments to mobilize. I think the murder of George Floyd is a turning point, but it's about increasing awareness and concretizing the organization towards it. But you see, it is more than just handing out checks. It's about mobilizing capital for development in Africa and the Caribbean, for intensifying intra-African trade, for intensifying infrastructure development to facilitate intra-African trade and development. It's to intensify education for all African children, all Caribbean children. It's about more than that. So there's work to be done, right? And you and I, this is the work that we've got to do. All right.
I do have more questions, Brother Obadele, but I'll give way for somebody else and maybe come back later if there's time.
All right.
Brother Shaka, you have your chance once again, but we do have a lineup of several folks we did invite on. And of course, Ambassador Kwesi Quartey is several hours ahead of us in Addis Ababa time. So we're also cognizant of that. Next, we have our brother Danis Tamir, brother who I've known, actually had coming over to my house. So if we can bring him on, always all over the continent in ways that people can't even imagine. They're like, how did you get there? He may be beside you next weekend, Addis Ababa, if not for COVID. But we're going to bring him on. He says he has a question, so we're going to go ahead and shift over down. And I love.
Hello.
What you got around you. Look very. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for having me on. It really means a lot. Honorable Kwesi, thank you so much for listening to our questions and hearing our what we have to say. It really means a lot. Thank you for taking time out of your day. The question is, and Sister Juliet from Blacksit, for the most part already addressed it. The symbology is great. When we come to Africa, the welcome home, brother, your home, brother. This is where you were kidnapped. When we go to the slave dungeons, that's beautiful. But at the same time, people who are serious, not everybody, we're not requesting passport on arrival, because there's some people that aren't serious, but they want passport for some reason just to claim that they have a passport. But when can we get something solid as far as, I know the African Union passport, some people already have access to it. So when can we get something solid where the victims of the slave trade, your brothers and sisters who were taken away to the West to, build the West and build these empires. When will we be officially on paper? Not, again, the symbology is great, the welcome home, brother, and the tours and the dances when you get to the airport, all that's great. But for those who are serious, since you were at the African Union, I know there's an African Union passport that's floating around. Some people do have it. When will we have access to this African Union passport? Those of the who are affected by the slave trade. That's my one and only question.
Good. For the time being, the African Union passport has been given only to officials and diplomats. Now, our struggle is to bring it down to the ordinary African in the street. I think that the struggle will have to begin with wherever country you are in. You see, because what we're trying to do is to design a common featured passport that will be issued by the authorities of the various member states. What this means is that you have to persuade the country you are in to be granted that nationality within the country you are in. So you have to do the work at the micro level as well as at the macro level. So our work is cut out for us, and it's still very much work in progress. I cannot, as I sit here, predict, because this is something that has to come from member states, has to accept it at the high level of assembly, of heads of states, and translated down to the various individual states. But I can assure you that the mood is right, but you have to push a little further within the member states, and you can make it happen.
Okay, and then this is, I just wanted to follow up with that, and I'm done. I know I want to get on. So for now, I'm Nigerian, so I have my Nigerian passport, I have my American passport as well. But for Black Americans who don't have a home in Africa officially, how does that look like? If you just can expand on how that push looks like.
You need, for instance, to come to one African country. You need, for instance, to come to a place like Ghana, where this idea is a little more advanced. Okay?
Okay.
And you can apply for a Ghanaian nationality, a Ghanaian passport. Then maybe from there you can get an AU passport when it becomes available. That is how I imagine it's going to be. But okay. I don't have all this, I have to admit.
Okay. All right. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your question. I like it.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
And Honorable Kwesi Quartey, we have people who are also logging in through our BB2Me, and one had a question for you. So if I can insert that, because we did mention to people that they would have the opportunity to have their questions asked. And this one is definitely related to the AU, but not necessarily what we've been talking about in terms of citizenship and reparations. The question is from Taharka Black, who asks, the situation in Libya is the gateway for expansion of foreign military bases and private mercenary invasion. Why is the AU not speaking against the situation in Libya? And I guess that's assuming that the AU hasn't said anything. I'm not aware of any special declarations that have been made, but can you speak to that perhaps?
The AU has made several strong declarations on Libya. But if you want to understand what's happening in Libya, you have to look at the genesis of the problem. When this matter was being discussed in the United Nations Security Council, the African members of the Security Council said nothing. The only protest came from Brazil. And before you could say Jack, President Sarkozy of France had mobilized to tell President Obama. And according to President Obama, that was one of his greatest errors and regrets when he was in power. And you see, it is very easy to destroy a country, but to put it back together. So we're now struggling with what has been left in Libya. And we need to now struggle to get a central authority to be established. So I agree with you. We sound helpless. We're just hoping that the civil war will stop and there will be some kind of a negotiated settlement to have a strong central authority. But these are some of the challenges that we have as an organization. That's all I can tell you now.
So we thank you so much for that. So for the question to Haka Black, I would advise you to definitely check out the AU official website for those several strong declarations that were made. There's no better person to hear about it from Honorable Nii Kwesi Quartey. So if it's there, you can read through it and, organize and mobilize on that basis. The next person we have up is Sister Neith Knight from the Blackest Truth. If we could also have you on with your questions. So please unmute. You're muted.
My apologies. Greetings, Your Excellency. How are you doing, brothers?
Cool. How are you too?
Happy Father's Day.
Where are you calling from? Thank you. Where are you calling from?
I am calling from the United States. I'm in the South, what is called Houston, Texas.
Okay. What's going on in Houston?
Nothing much. It's kind of raining here, but I'm with my dad, so it's a good day. It's a beautiful day.
Okay.
But, yes, sir. I had two small questions, and they're kind of not necessarily on the conversations of reparations. However, they are important. I wanted to know your opinion on how we can get our youth, the diaspora youth, the Africans who are here all around, and continental Africans. How can we strengthen a relationship between our youth so they don't experience what we're experiencing right now? You know, like for those who are 15 and under, how can we be doing things to encourage them to understand that y'all are brothers and sisters, things that we're currently struggling with?
That's right. You know, first of all, we have to teach them a bit of African history, but also a lot depends on how Africa gets its act together. You see, so long as Africa has not been able to put its act together properly, it has a negative effect on our diaspora brothers and vice versa. Okay, so it's as much work for us here on the continent as for you in the diaspora, and to get the two people, the two sides speaking to each other and learning about each other more. I know things are more difficult in the States because you're in a minority. It's not so bad in the Caribbean because the blacks are in a majority. But things are particularly difficult in the States because you have a right-wing white backlash, which you have to contend with, which means that you need more support from Africa. You need Africa to speak more to your case. Okay? But as I said earlier, there's work that we have to do together. And when you get a chance to visit the continent, bring your kids, bring your fathers, bring your brothers, and visit as much as you can. You know, it brings a certain catharsis, a certain togetherness. You suddenly get to realize that, look, you are from somewhere and you are somebody. You are very much a queen where you come from. You have to come home and reclaim it. I don't know whether this is sufficiently explanatory to you.
Yes, it is. And then my last question was, how can Africans of the diaspora influence what our sister Blacks was saying, the pockets of our continental brothers and sisters? Because I think if they can see us as more valuable, you know, if you're more value to someone, they take you a little bit seriously. So how can we, with COVID-19, kind of with China being moved out as a huge manufacturer of the world, how can we as the African diaspora put ourselves in Africa right in that spot, in that position? What are some pragmatic, practical things?
There is a Diaspora Africa Forum in Ghana, which is organized by African Americans who have returned home to Ghana, and is based in the Du Bois Center. I think if you Google, you can link up with them. There'll be a lot you can connect with them about. Brother Kambon can help you do that. Brother Kambon, can you do that? Yeah, what?
Yes, I can. I'm based in Ghana, and we have all of those contacts. And again, we have the experience of getting citizenship. So definitely Nii Night. If you're rolling with us, then you're already, you know, in the know.
I'm coming, y'all. Give me time.
All right. So we appreciate your question, Sister Nii. Ambassador Quartey, I saw that somebody just typed in the word sixth region, but it wasn't a full question. But I did have a question very much related to the sixth region. And it's something that we spoke about before when we were talking about the anniversary of the citizenship that we got in Ghana. And that was in 2016, as you know, Haiti applied to join the African Union and was rejected. Because of Article 29.1 of the African Union's Constitutive Act. It says only African countries can be part of the African Union. Meanwhile, Morocco, where as of 2016, according to Global Slavery Index, it had enslaved over 200,000 Black people and they use the same word for black person enslaved there, abid, right? So my question to you is, what is the essence of being part of the sixth region when no single member can come on as a voting member? No single member can be a full member of the African Union. Meanwhile, the Arabs who continue to enslave them can be full members. And if, as an entire region, we don't even have a vote, then any single Arab country can knock us down with anything that we propose. So that's my question to you.
I hear you. And this is just to show you the complexity of the stuff that we have to deal with, okay? We all know the history of Haiti, okay? The Haitian people dared to make a revolution, okay? They dared to break the shackles of slavery, okay? They dared to become a free nation. And for that, they have been punished up to this day, okay? Culturally, Haiti is closest to Africa, you can see. However, we still have to deal with the legal relations as they are. The task that we have now is to bring the notion of the sixth region concept into concrete reality. And we can only do that in cooperation with the Caribbean community, with CARICOM. We have an MOU, draft MOU. We're going to have a CARICOM AU summit in Kenya in June or in May, June. This has been postponed because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but it's still very much something that could happen. And these are issues that will be clarified and concretized at this AU CARICOM negotiation. So we still got work to do on this. We haven't got all the answers yet, but we have our work cut out.
All right, thank you so much. Utmost respect for that answer. The next person that we have is Brother Elliot, Time for an Awakening, and he is streaming live to the entire Black Talk Media Network. So, Brother Elliot, if we can have you on with your question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, man, I can see you even. How are you?
Great.
I can see you. I see you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, man, tell me.
Okay, good. How are you, Deputy Chair Kwesi Quartey?
I'm all right. I'm surviving.
Question for you. According to published reports here in the U.S., earlier this week, the UA addressed the Human Rights Council in Geneva about the George Floyd situation here in the States.
That's right.
The question is, was that a planned strategy to start addressing some of the atrocities going on in the sixth region, Black people here in the States? And the second part to that question is, in your mind, is there a connection between the blatant murders of our people here in the diaspora by the first line of defense, which is the police departments, and the Western aggression on Blacks worldwide by the U.S. military?
I think there is, you know, and a lot of it also has to do with the state of Africa as it is. As Africa gets better organized, as Africa gets better integrated, as Africa puts its act together better, so will Africa's children in diaspora be better respected and get better treated. So our fortunes are tied together.
Okay.
Yeah. But Africa is still very much work in progress. We have individual African nations who historically have not even been trading among themselves. Now we have the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, which is an important game changer, because now we are going to focus more on intra-African trade, more integration, more manufacturing. And as Africa's prestige rises, so will Africa's children, both in and out of Africa in the diaspora, be better treated because we will have greater clout to weigh in on issues affecting our brethren, both in the United States and the Caribbean. That is how I see it.
My second question, Deputy Chair, and it kind of dovetails on what you just stated. I'm quite sure the African Union has a plan moving forward for the continent and the diaspora as far as working together. In your mind, what is the best way that our people in the diaspora can best aid our brothers and sisters on the continent? And I'm talking about our children, preparing our children, whether it's in STEM, whether it's in construction trades, whether it's in education. What is the best way that we can start preparing our youth to aid and our people forward?
I think, to tell you the truth, we need to get to know each other better. We need to visit Africa. We need to bring them home. We need to visit each other. We need to get to know each other better. Okay? And then our children will begin to have the confidence that comes from having to visit where your ancestral home is. Okay? It brings a certain catharsis to your psychology. You suddenly become rooted. You can ask Mr. Kambon, what having come to Ghana, what having been through the slave castles, what it tells you about who you come from, your psychology, your culture.
Okay.
It is very important, but it is not easily, it is not palpable. It's psychological, it's spiritual. But I need to come and visit. I hope you visited Africa before, have you?
I've never been.
There you go. There you go. You're welcome to come to Ghana, man.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right.
Elliot.
Yes, sir.
All right, and thank you so much for your questions.
All right.
We've had a couple to come through on the chat. We have someone else. The next person to come up is going to be Baba Richard, and then Baba Lumumba. We've had a couple of questions coming through the chat, and I will ask you. I know Honorable Kwesi Quartey, my senior brother, your time, but as long as you're patient with us. All right, cool. All right, so let's do this. Let's take Baba Richard, then I'll ask one of the chat questions, and then Baba Lumumba, and we'll take it from there. All right, Baba Richard, please.
I want to thank you, Honorable Commissioner, for allowing us to be able to engage with you, and the BB Tume for creating this environment. I was going to follow up with, well, I had the question about the sixth region also, and you in your response to Brother Kambon, you raised the point earlier about policy, and you also made the point that about CARICOM. Those of us who in the USA who see ourselves in a colonized situation, it seems, and we want to also to be able to have a voice or a representation in the AU, and the understanding was to use this 6th district to do that. But because we're not a nation state, my question to you is, how do we go about, what are your thoughts and views about us? How do we go about making the policy understanding to the AU that is important for us who are in a nation state but not a nation state, so that we can be able to utilize at some point when the AU do come to that understanding of how it's going to be done, to be able to have a representation there.
Yeah. I see the point you're making, and I see the complexity of the issues not being a nation, as it were. But we have a diaspora unit here, and we can relate with you. We can relate to the organizations that you form. We can relate to the NAACP. We can relate with other Black American associations the universities, the organizations, and we welcome any association whatsoever. But this your task as much as ours. Okay, we need to fashion out new ways of relating to each other, and we need to think out of the box here.
Yes. And which means that we need to have more dialogue around structure and policy in order to present to the AU.
Structure, policy, and strategy.
Right.
Absolutely. Okay.
I appreciate that response. Thank you.
Great question, man.
So, Honorable, we have a few through the chat that I also want to field very quickly. For those who are viewing through our BB2Me, they're putting in some questions to the chat. One was, does the AU have a list of vetted organizations that it does listen to and respond to on 6 region issues? Is there basically an organ that people in the 6 region can use to speak to the AU and have our issues addressed?
Yeah, we have a diaspora section, and I'm sure you can find the address, the website on our website. So we'd like you to reach out more, seek questions, and together we'll reason through this. Just remember that our people have been scattered all over the place, and we are seeking to bring ourselves together in various new organizations and ways to assist each other. Okay? So let's think through this together.
All right, absolutely, we appreciate that. And I'm going to post a link to the diaspora section.
Mm-hmm.
Diaspora. We have Baba Lumumba. If we can have you in your questions, there are quite a few more coming to the chat, but we'll see what we have time for.
Yes, greetings.
What going on?
honor and respect to you.
Yeah, man.
Also to
reciprocated.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and also to Professor Kambon, thank you for hosting Connect Across the Water. So the question, I actually had 2 questions that have already been asked. One by Professor Kambon in relation to IET, and the other by Brother Richard in relation to Africans who are born and raised in the United States and who may not move back to Africa. Understand that many of our people will not be moving back to Africa, living and fighting for liberation and independence and representation right where they are in the diaspora. So as a representative of a Haitian organization.
Come check us out. Come check us out sometime. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been to the continent, and I look forward to going back after the pandemic is over to spend some more time with our brothers and sisters.
Okay. Okay.
But as a representative of a Haitian organization, and also someone who lives in the United States, so we see the neo-colonialism, the imperialism of the United States as it exists in Haiti. We see the racism and the brutality of American politics as it exists in the United States. My question then is, international charges see often against African heads of state, holding us to task on human rights. Is the African Union, the African Union Commission, willing and ready and up to the task to hold the United States government up to account on its human rights history against the lives of African people in those international institutions like that?
Yeah, we could try, but you see the international situation also, international relations is one of power and politics, and that's a reality. So you could raise questions and hope that some of it will come through. But I don't know whether we have the power to compel. We can only raise issues that can touch the conscience and that can influence behavior in another place, but you cannot compel. That's the reality. I don't know whether you understand me.
Yeah, I do, and I think that's an issue that just needs to be more aware of as diaspora. Second question in relation to that power then is the ability for Africans in the United States and other places that are not member states. I mentioned that the AU is member state driven, but we remember that Malcolm X, El Haj Malik Shabazz, was a great diplomat for African diaspora in the 60s without having any member state representation. He had a lot of influence and a lot of power.
Yeah, but Malcolm X visited Ghana, visited several African countries, and was invited to address the OAU. Malcolm X reached out. He reached out. Yeah, and there was interaction. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
A mechanism for that sort of diplomatic representation for bodies, like Brother Richard said, within the diaspora that are not formal nation states.
No. But it means that you have to do, there's more organization required within your group, wherever you are. Okay? And more reaching out, interaction across the ocean.
Sure.
Malcolm X did that. Martin Luther King did that. You know, and we've got to do more of that.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, sir.
All right, we definitely appreciate that. There was another one that came through the chat that I think is saying, you mentioned member state driven, but maybe you can speak to this. So the question is, can Africa remove visa restrictions for African descendants returning home to all parts of the continent? And related to that is also the question that I think ties in is, okay, if we don't have these visa restrictions, is it something that can be pressed for? Someone also through Bibi Tumi asked, can diasporans be represented as part of the AU's Pan-African Parliament? So I think maybe we'll take those two together in terms of representation and then also visa restrictions.
It is possible with ECOSOC. It is possible with ECOSOC. And I think with respect to visa restrictions or visa relaxation, it will have to be on a country-by-country basis, okay? And we have to start with one country. Look at the most progressive, start with one country, and then perhaps this can be replicated in several other countries. Because we've been divided into several independent sovereign countries, and you cannot impose ideas on them. You can only persuade and lead by example. But it's an interesting proposal, I think.
I definitely appreciate you answering that question. Another question also came through, and this is also through Bibi Tumi. For those who are streaming through our Bibi Tumi, we definitely appreciate you all. Another question came through in terms of what can the AU Commission do, and this is more general, in terms of ending dependency on non-Africans. You know, all Eurasian, their progeny, ending economic dependence on non-Africans. What can the AU and AU Commission do in terms of ending dependency, economic dependency?
The AU can only become more independent when it gets more integrated economically. You know, the continent was divided up in Berlin 1884-85. And the whole process of African integration through the AU is that we're seeking to unravel the shackles that we brought in and to trade with each other more. So the more we do that, the more we become a manufacturing continent, the less dependent we should be. So that is the task for all of us. And the beginning, I think, is the CFTA.
All right. We definitely appreciate that as well. We have another question that came, and in the chat that has sparked ongoing discussion around it, but someone was asking, can those in the diaspora who don't have a home country get coastal land allocated so we can form our own nation? I have my own thoughts about it, but since it came through, I will defer to you to answer that.
You know, I know that in Ethiopia, there's land given to diaspora Africans. In Ghana, there's thought being given to diaspora villages, tracts of land to be provided for those of the diaspora who want to come. So this is also a work in progress. And we have to keep pushing to see whether it can happen sooner rather than later.
All right. So we appreciate that. There were two questions that came through Juliet. Juliet, I'm not sure if she's still on. If not, she's typed it in the chat. So if you can come on the video, we can pull you on the video. I know she said that she had to go to actually try to get her citizen. I think I'll just read it out for her. She wanted to know what is the current status regarding the executive assent and what are the responsibilities?
What? I didn't hear you.
Of the AU president and vice president of the diaspora. So the question was the responsibilities of the president and vice president of the diaspora, and how is it of benefit to diasporans in the continent? If you can speak to that.
Yeah, is there a president of the diaspora? I'm not aware of that. I'm not aware of that.
Okay, so that may not be an official AU body or an AU recognized body. Someone also asked the question, what are the recognized bodies? Some people may be using the term perhaps AU affiliated or something. If you're not aware of it, then I think you're already...
That's Prime Minister of the diaspora and stuff, but I'm not aware of that. It's strange to me, to tell you the truth. Yeah.
All right, so you've answered that question in a way.
Have I?
Another question that came through was, and I think this is in regard to the entire diaspora. Usually we think about the Western Hemisphere and transatlantic. Someone is asking, is the AU aware of the genocide in West Papua New Guinea? So these are, Black people in, these islands, Pacific islands, who are being systematically wiped out and exterminated.
Where is that?
Is there any AU position?
Where is that?
West Papua New Guinea.
Oh, I'm afraid I'm totally unaware of that. I have no idea about that.
All right, so we can move to the next question. But just for those who may be also watching and may be interested, West Papua New Guinea is part of an island, actually, together with Papua New Guinea, where there are Black people who have been there for thousands of years, just like Melanesia, just like Bougainville, and just like all other places where Black people are located, they have been subjected to genocide. So recently, Chief Benny Winda, a couple years ago, actually, he came to the Institute of African Studies, just as you were there when we had the Ministry of the Future, and he said that he's begging African Studies and he's begging Ghana. Ghana got independence first, so Ghana would be the best place to assist them in their fight against being exterminated by, these Eurasians who are systematically hunting them down. So if anyone types in West Papua New Guinea, you'll see images of Black people who look just like your cousin, uncle, sister, aunt, who have been disemboweled, who have their heads that have been severed and are being shown to the camera. And I think it really just speaks to Honorable Kwesi Quartey, Nii Kwesi Quartey, the global situation of Black people, that until Africa is a superpower, no Black people anywhere on the planet. The Indo-Aryans in India are still exterminating Black people there, if we go on and on. But maybe just more generally, not specific to that, what is the AU doing globally, not just about transatlantic, because trans-Saharan was first, and it's still ongoing. what is the AU doing with regards to all those, some of which are member states who are still enslaving Black people? Maybe you could speak generally to that.
Oh, well, I tell you, we have our work cut out for us. As we sit here, we cannot claim to know about all the atrocities going around the world. Our hands are full, just trying to put our own act together, trying to put our house in order. And as we get our house in better order, we'll be in a better position to address these issues. That's all I can tell you now.
All right, thank you. And I think it's something that everybody on the line would definitely need to know more about, because very few people even think about the Eastern diaspora when we think about, Black people. The CDs who were enslaved in India in the 600s by Arabs as well. But someone else has a question about the ECHO currency, right? So what about the currency, one currency for the African continent? We know about ECHO Bank. Is there anything that is on the horizon?
Yeah, that is also very much work in progress. It's about harmonizing
monetary integration for the.
Yeah, it's very much work in progress as well. Okay.
All right. So I think from here, and we appreciate this, let's just maybe set a cap on your time, because I know it's getting to bedtime in Addis Ababa. So as much indulgence as you will give, but at a certain point in time, I will say that's enough. We'll have part 2 and let you get to it. But Brother Shakara, if you could come on with your question. I'm seeing in the chat, I know you're here still on the, if you could comment. We'll maybe take 1 or 2 more, and then we'll call it a day. And we thank you. We have thousands of people who are either in the chat or streaming, seeing the stream live. So we appreciate your time.
Give thanks, brother Obadele. I'll ask my own question, and then I'll ask this question from the chat. Is that okay? On behalf of, yeah?
Go ahead, man.
Okay. All right. So, Uncle, my question is really, it kind of stems from a question that somebody asked previously, and it's in relation to when the Ministry of Tourism came out recently and made a statement on the killing of George Floyd, and many Africans in the diaspora.
You talk about Ghana.
Yeah, yes. But they came out and made a statement on the killing of George Floyd, and many Africans in the diaspora were moved by that. And in the sense of the fact that, if you're in America, you're Chinese, and something happens to you, generally speaking, there's going to be some response from the Chinese government in relation to that. Yeah, the same for the Indian government or Japanese government and them kind of things there. So as a representative of the African Union, I'm sure many Africans in the diaspora would like to see more of an outspoken voice from the AU in relation to what happens to Africans in the diaspora. Is that something that the AU can facilitate in terms of at least putting out statements, at least representing on the issues that are facing us, and beyond that, is there any political pressure or even economic pressure that the African Union can put on Britain and America and these European nations in relation to how they treat the sons and daughters of Africa in the diaspora?
Yeah. I hear you. The amount of pressure you can bring to bear will depend on the political and economic weight you have. And the political and economic weight of Africa will grow as Africa integrates and governs itself better and gets its economy in a better shape. So these are relative matters. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you for that answer. There is a question in the chat from Brother M.A. Brown, and it says, what work is being done by the AU to combat the European influence on schools being built by UNESCO? They were supposed to build 1,000 schools in Congo, for example. and I believe Brother M.A. Brown is saying that this is an undesirable, occurrence. So is the AU doing anything to kind of address that issue?
Well, you're telling me building of schools is undesirable? Is that what you're telling me?
I think it's more the fact that they're being built by UNESCO rather than an independent African organization with an independent African mentality, if that makes sense.
I think that UNESCO is the one international organization whose thoughts, whose actions are closest to African aspirations. UNESCO developed a slave route project to educate people on the slave trade. So I would like to investigate this a little more. Okay, I frankly don't know too much about this.
Understood, Uncle. Understood. Give thanks, Your Excellency. Thank you very much.
All right, and my mother had a question/comment, and it was really coming to, she says, not having power should not be a reason not to continue.
What?
Compulsion in terms of power, but if we have a voice whatsoever,
you cracked up there for a second.
Okay, all right. I hope you can hear me now. I may pause the cam just so that okay. So my question to you, Honorable Quartey, or rather plea, is to continue hearing your voice. I think for me personally, for you to take this up, to say I'm going to engage the diaspora on this, it speaks volumes, right? We see George Floyd, we see towns burning, cities burning throughout the world. And for you as an AU official to come online and to make a strong statement about it is plenty. So you have, if no other power, you have the power of your tongue and the power of speech, as well as the power of your position. So even if you're not going to go up and smack Donald Trump upside the back of his head, if we can hear your strong voice, I think that would be plenty in terms of keeping the pressure on them in terms of what they're doing. If they can kill us in the streets, we can at the very least raise our voice and say that what you're doing is criminal. It is.
I hear you, my brother. I hear you loud and clear. Okay.
I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer, and I think we may have two more questions, and then we'll close it out. Period, because of your time. But a question that came through from Achiboye on a BB Tumi is, why did they move Dr. Arikana out of the AU? I don't know if you can speak to that. But that's the question that's on the table now.
I think that was one of the sad errors that the AU made, and Dr. Arikana was a very powerful voice in the diaspora, and if we get a chance, we'll bring her back, but we'll see what we can do. All right.
That sounds like we need to promote you from deputy chair to chair if we want to see her back. So you have our vote. If the diaspora can vote, you're in. So that'll also let us know that we need to get the diaspora to have more.
Obadele, do you have a vote?
Then, all right. So I think I mentioned two more questions, and I'll just take those that I see here in the chat on YouTube once again. So we say, regarding repatriation, we believe that this is an effective way to accomplish this by first priming of both the African population and repatriation. And what is the diaspora engagement policy, either of member states or the AU? As it stands now, diaspora, the term diaspora itself has been, let's say, to some degree hijacked to only mean continental Africans who have gone abroad to live in the UK, live in the US.
There's a definition of the diaspora. Right. Anybody of African descent who is ready and willing to work for the unification of the African people is part of the diaspora. Go check the Executive Council definition of diaspora. It includes diaspora Africans, it includes Africans working abroad. Anybody of African descent who is ready and willing to work is part of the diaspora. Go check it out.
So I've seen that actually, Honorable Nii Kwesi Quartey. I've also been privy to the diaspora engagement policy of one of the member states, which I hope would serve as a template that will be distributed to other AU member states, and that is the one of Ghana. So Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they actually invited some of us, including myself, there. And when we read the diaspora engagement policy that they had, every single part of it was about how to renew your Ghanaian passport and how to get in touch with your hometown association.
No, there's more to it than that. There's more to it than that.
I'm actually getting at is that there definitely should. So when we gave our input, we said that we have to have a definition and we have to operate with our policies on the basis of that definition to speak to have been brought up here, like citizenship, like waiver of visa fees and things of that nature. I don't know if you're saying that there should be more than that. When people are writing policy that has written you out of the definition of diaspora, is not much that we can do. So anything you have to say about the direction we should go in, I would definitely love that.
The diaspora, as we understand it, includes those who were taken away in the slave ships, their ancestors, those people of African descent, and all that. It includes all of that. Okay?
Yeah, great definition. So I've seen that in the document. We just have to make that hold weight where it comes to policies that write us, the actual people that we think of when we think of diaspora, out of it, and it disenfranchises us, franchises those who have gone abroad in terms of those things.
You know, this debate for me shows us the importance of continuous engagement. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So, Honorable, there are other questions. I'm going to take my authority as the convener, co-convener with you of this esteemed August event to give it to you if you have any closing words for us. For those who have any other questions, perhaps they can be relayed by email. You and I are in touch, we're in contact. And I also have the contact of
can continue
other colleagues.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just like you said, engagement, continue engagement. But do you have any last words to wrap things up for the hundreds that are on the chat right now and the thousands who are listening to you and who will listen? We got folks with 1 million subscribers who are going to look at this. So anything.
I simply want to thank you all for the privilege of engaging with you. For me, it's been an inspiration and an education. So I want to thank you very much. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And we thank you too. We intended to start with a libation, but the tech difficulties and trying to set things up did not allow that to happen. So this is the calabash, and to close us out, some water is poured on the ground in the memory of millions of Africans who died in enslavement, and in hopes of the millions of Africans who are going to restore justice, bring the land of Black people back into effect, Kemet in full effect. And again, we thank you for your time, Honorable, and we look forward to the next engagement. You are true to your position, just as we hope you would do. You are coming, and you're actually speaking to our issues. We're going to make that concrete by actually adding some support to you. You shouldn't be one single person, not that you are, but you shouldn't be one single person fighting the good fight. So those of us in the diaspora, those of us who are descendants, we're going to fight on your behalf as well. So we're here for you just like you're here for us. Simba Sembi, hold up that which holds you up. And we thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm very flattered. Thank you so much.
We thank you too.
Ciao.
All right, Brother Shaka, we appreciate it. And we want to let Honorable get to bed in Addis Ababa. And thank you once again.
We'll catch up in Accra soon, man.
Inu.
Okay.